Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Pan Future Society podcast. I am your host, Sean. Still, yes, I know, going on 34 weeks in a row with a couple of weeks off, and I am still Sean. Anyway, today is Saturday, January 28th, 2017. And boy, there was a lot of stuff in the news this last week or so let's get right to your news of the moment. Lots of medical stuff this week, so I want to give you three quick news bits. And as always with the medical sort of thing, keep in mind these are very limited results, limited tests, limited trials. We're still a ways from applying this to everyone all the time, but it's remarkable nonetheless. First item, a man named Christopher Boson of Bakersfield, California, suffered a cervical spine injury in a car accident and was paralyzed from the neck down. There was a chance this would be permanent, but he qualified for a clinical study at USC, the Keck Medical Center. Charles Liu, director of the USC Neurorestoration Center, leading a surgical team, injected Christopher's cervical spine with 10 million AST OPC1 cells directly into the spinal cord. These cells, in particular, are made from stem cells, and this experiment is part of a multi-center clinical trial. And 2 weeks after the surgery, Boson began to show improvement, and about 3 months after, the article here says, he is able to feed himself, use his cell phone, write his name, operate a motorized wheelchair, and hug his friends and family. He has improved sensation in both arms and hands, and can take care of himself a little easier. He's able to move much more of his upper body than anybody thought he would be able to. Hopefully, this will lead to further treatments for paralysis injuries. Second medical item here comes from London's Great Ormond Street Hospital, where doctors treated 2 babies suffering from leukemia with genetically engineered immune cells from a donor. They took these donors' T cells, those are the cells in your immune system that attack things, and engineered them so that they only attack leukemic cells. These infants aged 11 and 16 months each had leukemia and had gone previous treatments that did not work. And it appears that these engineered T cells have cured them of leukemia. Now, the one caveat here, raised by some people, is that these children were also undergoing a standard chemotherapy. So they did not show that this T-cell treatment was the only thing that cured them of leukemia. But I think it's still remarkable that they were able to engineer these cells to go after leukemic cells. It's one of the hardest things about treating cancer is getting rid of the cancer cells while leaving healthy cells untouched. So again, 2 kids, not a very widespread study, but definitely something worth pursuing into the future as a treatment for cancer. And your third health item this week. Doctors in New Delhi have treated a baby born with Down syndrome with stem cells. This 3-year-old baby had less than normal motor skills and other conditions that come along with Down syndrome. And the stem cell treatment has given this 3-year-old improved motor skills, better muscle tone. He has started babbling and crawling, as the article says here, and has been more social and is recognizing his close family. Now, this is not a cure. Down syndrome, at least at this point, is not something that can be cured. However, it would appear that an infusion of stem cells improves the connections between neurons and replaces damaged neurons and could perhaps improve some of the effects that people with Down syndrome have to go through. Again, one baby, so limited information here, but yet again another stem cell treatment in your news of the moment. And now,
it came from outer space.
And the space news this week came back from outer space and is also genetic medical news. NASA has been studying twin astronauts Scott and Mark Kelly to see what might happen to an astronaut in space, and this is the first time they've been able to study twins. So they're starting with sort of a baseline identical genetic set. Now, these two men are both astronauts, and Scott Kelly recently spent 340 days on the ISS, 2015 to 16, and he has a lifetime total in space of 520 days. His brother Mark is also an astronaut and has flown in space for a total of 54 days over 4 space shuttle missions from 2001 to 2011. The researchers are finding changes and differences in just about everything, from some gene expression to gut microbiome stuff. Significantly, DNA methylaction is a reversible chemical marker that can affect gene expression. This decreased in Scott during his time in space and increased in Mark over the same time on Earth, and levels for both men returned to pre-flight levels after Scott came back. Another thing they found is that gene expression signatures are different between the twins, and these changes do happen to Earthbound people all the time. Usually, this kind of thing is associated with environmental shifts, such as changes in diet and sleep habits. But the changes in Scott seemed larger than normal, according to the report. They think perhaps due to the stress of eating freeze-dried food and trying to sleep while floating in space. So this initial data dump here is quite large, and they're finding everyone is finding something different. And right now this is very early. We're not exactly sure. The team is not exactly sure what this means. It will take some time to sort that out and come up with some ideas. But NASA has never had an opportunity like this to actually collect concrete data on not only what happens to astronauts in space, but to have a comparison to an essentially what's the word I'm looking for? I'm totally blanking on it. Control group. This is a control group, a genetically identical control group that they've been able to study using Mark's genetic information. So thank you so much, Scott and Mark Kelly, for providing this service to humanity. And I do hope that this will help NASA understand the changes that astronauts undergo in space and what protections we might be able to develop for them if we are going to live in space or travel great distances. And that all there is your news of the moment. All right, on to the main segment for this week. And thank you for sticking with me. This show is going to be a bit longer than usual, a bit more news than usual, and the more I wrote this week, the more I wanted to write this week. I hope it's not too rambly and ranty for you. But anyway, this show is about communication. As I reviewed my writing, I'm not sure I've been able to communicate well, or if I've just been writing to try to make sense out of my thoughts. I will put links in the show notes to a few very good articles about facts, arguments, and science communication. Communicating at any level isn't easy, but it's essential for a successful civilization. Honestly, sometimes I'm not sure if the internet is a good thing or a bad thing. I suppose, like any tool, it depends on how you use it. You can use a hammer to hang a picture or crack a skull. I know people have always disagreed, but there is something about online communication that enables people to display hate and vitriol and ignorance as if it's a blazing sword cutting through the world around them. A difference of opinion is fine, but we have lost any ability to discuss differences and come to rational conclusions and compromises. All we do now is bludgeon each other with loudness and anger. I'm an introvert, and this world is especially difficult to navigate for people like me. Sometimes I would like everyone to shut up. But putting that aside, I think introverts can offer people a valuable lesson in communication. Listen. That is the skill most lost in the modern world. We tweet and post and comment, spewing forth without really trying to understand not only what someone else has said, but why they have come to that conclusion. And this problem isn't just on any one side of the political spectrum. Never forget that other people are just that, people, human beings, members of your species, fellow travelers on this pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. Confirmation bias is something we all suffer from, and you should be aware from it as you absorb any information or ponder whether you've got the whole story. As humans, we like to take in information that agrees with what we already believe, even if sometimes those beliefs are subconscious. This, in fact, appears to be at the core of the problem. A recent study, led in part by the University of Oregon, showed that people who reject scientific consensus on global warming, vaccines, evolution, and other topics are in general as interested in science and as well educated as those who accept the consensus. Where the problem lies is that people will cherry pick facts or perceived facts that support their opinion and reject anything that does not. Trying to throw more facts at a person in this mindset will usually just entrench them further. How did we get here? Over the past several decades, there has been a shift that has allowed science to be used as a weapon or tool in political and social arguments, often in the form of opposing science to support a certain ideology. This has left many people suspicious of science and scientists, assuming that some sort of agenda to control society or something like that is behind the scientists' conclusions. Some people have always cherry-picked facts, but now our political and social leaders do as well. A belief has crept into our government that any environmental science is an attack on the free market, or any science supporting evolution is an attack on religion. And enough people have been convinced this is happening that we have elected anti-science people to office. When dealing with someone who is so entrenched that nothing will change their mind and no common ground can be found, I'm not really sure what to do. In the past, the far fringe could be ignored, but the internet has made everything equal. In some ways good, and yet in some ways not. I really don't know how to get to people who are totally entrenched in a viewpoint. I hope to discover this in the future and share it with you. Right now, I imagine the best thing to do is to find common ground away from the argument. I'm a musician. I work and have worked with a lot of people I disagree with on other topics, but we focus on music. When music is the task, the rest doesn't matter. I hope you can find that with your neighbors. I'm not sure anyone knows how to fix all this, but the researchers I mentioned before did suggest doing everything you can to find common ground. I do sometimes also think that the issues are too big and people tune out. Global climate change is a big thing to deal with. Maybe we need to go back to talking about air pollution and clean water. Smaller ideas that affect each of us regardless of the cause. The Clean Air and Clean Water Acts of the 1970s made huge improvements in our lives. And who doesn't want clean air and water? Can we break down other arguments into smaller components? I think there is also common ground not in what is happening or why, but in what we do about it. As the effects of climate change become obvious, they will affect national security and the economy, issues in which conservatives will be interested in doing something about. And the issue is not just an environmental one. Another thing about modern communication that bothers me is that hyperbole has become too much the norm. Everything is the greatest ever, the worst ever, the one weird trick, or a complete disaster. Black and white, no gray. Mountains are made out of molehills, which can distract you from the actual mountains you should be aware of. I will use a political example since it just came up in the news recently. President Trump thinks millions of people voted illegally. There is no evidence at all for this. However, Steve Bannon, Steve Mnuchin, and Tiffany Trump, all very close to Mr. Trump, are registered to vote in 2 states. Some news outlets have latched onto this as if it's some huge scandal. Well, it's only illegal to vote more than once, not to be registered more than once. No one unregisters when they move somewhere else. It's a molehill, and the mountain, I think, is that Trump would like to convince everyone voter fraud is widespread. Again, no evidence whatsoever. And new laws will be passed that will actually suppress the vote. This happens all the time in science communication. Burnt toast causes cancer. That's the headline. The reality is that acrylamides, which are created when cooking starchy foods, it's what makes the toasted and browned colors, are possible carcinogens, as are a great many things, but there isn't enough research to confirm how high the risk is. Refer back to last week's episode. I don't know. So go ahead and eat toast, but you probably shouldn't eat 300 pieces of burnt toast a day. Not a very sexy headline, but much more useful information. Mountains and molehills, shades of the gray. I think the media is also partly to blame for this. Stories about science are often badly written with sensationalist headlines. Often reporting is only half done about stories that are incomplete. And here I also think some scientists carry blame as well. You see a story about some food curing cancer. What actually happened was that a compound isolated from the food slowed cancer growth in mice or in a petri dish. Something kind of working in a petri dish and the cure for cancer in humans are a long way apart. For the most part, I would take a story from any well known media source like ABC News or Reuters with a grain of salt. Look for links to the original research. I will also put links in the show notes for a few good science news sources that I think can be trusted to not over sensationalize things. You are entitled to your opinion, but not your own facts. Facts are what they are. Interpretation of them can be fluid, and in areas like politics, what is quote unquote right is a matter of judgment. But nothing can be done at all if basic facts are ignored or dismissed, and science stands apart. Science gets us as close to objective facts as we can possibly get. Sometimes I'm very pessimistic about the situation we are in. It's one thing to disagree about what facts mean, it's another to be where we are disagreeing about what the facts are. As much as I will disagree with you, you are allowed to say Hitler was right to kill Jews. What you cannot say is that it never happened. There are mountains of evidence that it did happen, and you can't throw it down the memory hole. You can disagree about what, if anything, should be done about climate change, but you cannot deny the fact that we have passed 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, a number not seen since long before the beginning of human history. However, it is also my duty to communicate to anyone who disagrees with established science in a manner that reaches them, helps them understand, and does not push them away. I hope this episode hasn't been too much of a rant. In part, I wrote this to try to get a handle on my own thoughts on this topic. If there are only a few things you take from me today, let it be this: listen more, and be aware that all of us have flawed brains, subject to confirmation bias. If you can, slow down a bit and consider not only what you think, but why you think the way you do. If we can't fix our communication problem, our civilization will not move forward. And there you have it. There's the show for this week. Hey, thanks for sticking with me on that rambly soapbox of a thing, that whatever that was. Find us online at panfuture.org. Facebook and Twitter things happen. YouTube things happen. Leave comments on the show page. Email me, Sean, SEAN, at panfuture.org. If you'd like to help out the show, there's donate buttons on the website, or email me and I'll let you know about it. Or you can write reviews on Stitcher and iTunes and YouTube and share the links around. Share this with your friends and family or people you think should hear it. And I always appreciate that sort of thing very much. And I will talk to you again in the future.